So, welcome to Pitch Talk Unfiltered, where we're the only football podcast that tackles several often overlooked aspects of the game. Opinions and why opinions only matter to those who actually give it, because opinions shouldn't ruin your love of the game and your determination to exceed. So we're going to run through a number of examples of very well-known professional footballers that have had opinions thrown at them, but then they've reached the pinnacle of the game. So we'll go into detail with various observations. So you can use these observations as a guide for when something like this happens to you. So welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you for having me as always. It's always a pleasure. And yes, this is a great topic. I think it can help many young players or even players in general. I think this is a topic that's not talked as often. And so definitely I recommend listening to these points because they're very important. Yeah, I mean, in regards for opinion, we'll start off with some examples. Since I was little playing in the Italian system, I was, I wasn't the tallest one. I wasn't the best one. And I was, a skinny boy, not fully developed. I was a late bloomer. And, often at a young age, I had coaches telling my parents, when I was 12, 13, that I should take the sport just for fun, maybe play one or twice a week with friends on a Tuesday evening, like not academy level because he won't go as far. And this was statements that they told to my parents. It wasn't even like opinions, and then of course, when I found out, it was hard, because imagine at 12, 13, they're telling you to basically don't pursue this sport at a high level. It's devastating. But years after, with lots of hard work and with developing my mentality, I played over 4 countries around the globe, 6 different cities. I traveled to multiple countries for tournaments, games. And I reached the professional level. And not only that, I also as well opened my academy here in the US. So just to let you know, from someone that was telling you to stop pursuing the sports, even
Mm.
at a higher level, look how much I got, over these last years,
Yeah.
So that's just, a little intro just to show you how there are going to be people in your career where they're going to tell you that's the max you can go, the max you can play, but you'll never know, because
And
they don't know.
yeah, and that's a great starting point and a great personal example. I guess the lesson there is that if kids like you, when you were 14, 15, you didn't know that. Just because an opinion came from a coach, you thought, oh, okay, the coach knows best. But something in your gut said to you, no, well, I'm going to continue. I'm going to persevere. And in a similar way, and these are one of the 10 observations that we're going to go through today, is that it can range from anything from physical limitations through to being a late bloomer, as you said. So the first one that we probably should look at, and this is going to resonate with a lot of people, is overcoming physical limitations. You're going to get coaches, you're going to get club officials, even scouts of clubs and agents saying to you, at 12, 13, 14, you know what, your body shape isn't the right body shape for football. But again, how would they know? Okay, to make those sorts of statements, how would they know? Because a child doesn't stop growing, particularly a boy, until he's in his early 20s. So, the example that I want to give, and maybe you can add to this, is everyone knows Lionel Messi. Everyone said that he was too short to play football. And even now, he's only 5'7", but he has unbelievable and extraordinary skill and agility to have become one of the best footballers on the planet. So even like people like Messi, I'm sure that they would have said early on before he went to Barcelona that, he wasn't going to make it as a footballer. And look at him now, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think this is a huge problem that's happening, especially in our generation. There's many coaches that do not give opportunities, not because of their talents or their skill level, but simply because they see on that CV their height. Oh,
Mm,
they don't meet our requirements.
mm,
There's coaches that would prefer a taller or bigger player, even if their quality is not at the level, than a good player that maybe their height doesn't meet the requirements. So that, and again, I've been battling this since I first started my journey. Especially being a defender. I'm not the shortest and I'm not the tallest,
Mm.
but I've been battling this for many years until this day because even if the modern football is shifting, there's always the coaches that have the old school mentality,
Mm.
thinking that a big, tall defender can win them leagues or games. So
Mm.
by all means, if you're for your playing style and you're a coach, the taller and bigger defender has the qualities for your playing style. You have to, of course, like you have to accept it. But the problem is they don't even give chances to players just for their heights. They don't get trials. They don't even look at their footage just because on their CV they have that height that they don't like. Especially as a defender.
And it's a wasted
I,
opportunity. Yeah.
I had to battle a lot. And again, then you hear stories like Puyol, Cannavaro, Martinez, that they're all center backs, and they're probably one of the top 10 best center backs in history.
Mm.
And they're 5'8", 5'7",
That's
whatever
right.
their heights. They're not the classic tall center backs,
Mm.
but yet they were the ones with the most leadership, the captains of their own teams, and this shows you how many stories do we need to demonstrate these coaches that the height does not matter. It's the
Mm.
quality, because then these players at that level, for example, Martinez, he's a short center back, but he plays in the most physical league in the world.
That's right.
And someone says, how is that possible? And he's a center back. He's playing against players like Holland, for example, that are double his size.
Mm.
But it's because they adapt with the playing style. Each player adapts with their own playing style. They play smart. There's the tall center backs that maybe don't have pace, but the shorter ones do have pace.
Mm.
So you have to adapt with the playing style. But unfortunately, it's a problem, and I'm still to this day battling that they don't even look at my profile or
Mm.
profiles just because of the height. And I had
Well,
agents saying
mm.
that some countries I couldn't even enter in the league
Wow.
system
Okay.
just because of the height. They
Wow.
didn't say, and I'm not saying first, second, third division. I'm saying in their league system, I couldn't even look at it just because of
Mm.
the height. So I think it's a mentality that has to go away in order to get the best players.
It has to change because we can quote so many examples. I can even throw in Harry Kane here. He was people probably don't know this, but he was at Arsenal's academy, and they let him go because they said he was too chubby. And now he's England's one of England's best players.
Yeah,
So this mentality of if I see a kid and I think that he's either too chubby or too short or too tall and too lanky, um, you know, again, the younger aspiring footballers need to understand that this is opinion. And if you want to make
100%.
a change, then you make a change. If you're determined to make it as a professional footballer, then you will say, well, okay, this person's told me that. That's just one
Yeah,
person's point of view. Okay.
100%.
And the
100%.
one thing that I've noticed as an agent when I speak to families, and parents say this a lot, is that, Johnny decided not to pursue football anymore because too many clubs were saying that he was too short, for example, right? It's an opinion. It's a point of view. It needs to change, but what we want is for young footballers to be resilient, and say, well, no one's going to stop me. So
It's important.
overcoming any sort of physical limitations is probably the one observation that we've learned. You personally having played the game, and me having spoken to so many clubs and scouts on an international level. The next one, look, the next observation that we've come across is, what we call the late bloomers in football, and the best example that I guess we can give is, Jamie Vardy from Leicester City. He started off at Fleetwood Town, and he was that's non-league football in the UK, and he was 25 years old. Now, a lot of people might see Jamie Vardy as being a Leicester City champion, which he is, but not having realised that he came into the Premier League quite late, right? And the
Right.
Premier League being one of the most toughest competitions on the football calendar, he actually made it. So again, just because you're 25, 26, 27, it does not mean anything.
No.
If you have a focus to make it professional, you know what? You're on your own journey. You're taking a little bit longer than others. That doesn't matter. And again, don't be influenced by the what I call the wonder kids that you see when they're 18 or 19 or 20 and representing their country or playing for Manchester United or AC Milan. They're just extraordinary situations, and this is where the young kids need to understand that it's the journey is your own journey, and there's no rush. Yeah,
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the beauty of life because everybody has its own timing, its own journey. I always say this, there's presidents, there's people that become presidents of the United States of America at 48, and there's people that become presidents at 78 years old, for
yep,
example,
yep,
So everybody has its own time and a journey. And then imagine this, imagine if everybody had the same story. It would be boring,
of
and no,
course.
nobody would learn. So that's how movies, that's how motivational stories, that's how books are written, is because everybody has different timing, different journeys,
Yeah,
and as well for myself, I started this career, pursuing this professional career at 18 years old,
yeah,
and there's players that are at 16 playing the Euros, for example,
that's
but
right.
at the end of the day, the beauty is the diversity, the different stories,
Of course.
because then people can relate to it, and this is just with life in general. There's different timings and everything. There's people that can find their love partner at a young age, and then there's people that take a whole lifetime to find one, for example.
Hmm.
So it's not just with football. It's not just with it's with life in general.
Yeah,
That's why football and life are so similar because the lessons that you learn is off the pitch as well. So I think that's the beauty of everything is the diversity of the different stories.
that's fantastic. And again, you're on your own journey,
Yeah,
and you've experienced the world. Even at the age that you're at, the young age that you're at, you've experienced more than anybody that is your age, that are your acquaintances or friends have experienced because of your path to become or to having become a professional footballer. So everyone's journey is different. And this is what young kids need to understand. Don't think you need to make it by the age of 17 or 18. You could make it by the age of 26.
yeah,
And the next example I want to give you, which probably is a nice little segue, is the observation of your path to success is different to somebody else's path to success. Okay,
of course,
so an example would be, Didier Drogba. At the age
of
of
course, yeah,
21, he was playing in the lower divisions of French football. Nobody wanted to talk to him or to even give him an opportunity. But then he obviously persevered because he knew what he wanted, right? And this is obviously an unconventional path, but a lot of footballers these days go through this. They start off in the fifth division, the national division of the English competition, or they start off in the Eccellenza, which is the fifth division, or after the Serie D in the Italian competition.
yeah, of
But they
course,
end up making it. Now, Drogba ended up playing with Marseille at 26.
of course.
And then he moved to Chelsea, and then all of a sudden, he's one of the
No,
best players to ever play the game.
of
Can you see?
course, and I think it's very important. And some people might say, "Oh, but those are the rare stories." Yes, but do you think that they had a mentor that they were like, "Hey, you might be, you'll be Vardy." No,
Mm,
nobody had an idea of what they were doing. So why not be the Vardy of your neighborhood?
that's
Why
right.
not be the Vardy of your city? You'll never know, and nobody will ever know. So that's why I think it's very important, even if it looks so far from where you're at right now, that you have to have that adrenaline to be that Vardy or Drogba of your neighborhood, of your
Yep.
family,
Yep.
because they didn't know that they would be the best in the world, but yet, they went all in, and that's what happened. And of course, there's factors that help with it too, and an important factor is the coach.
Yeah.
People understand that it's you as a player have to have the right mentality, you have to have a lot of traits in order to make at that level, but that one coach will change your whole career.
Mm,
And I guarantee you that if Ronaldo, if all of these young players are playing at the Euros right now, they didn't have that coach that would give them the platform to do it, they would never be where they're at right now.
yeah.
It's that one coach that gives you the platform, the trust and the personality in order to do it, because you have to have personality as a coach to give these players the platform to showcase. Of course, if they don't produce the results, or they don't perform, that's one thing. But
Mm.
all these players, they were nobody, and the coach said, "You go in," and then they took that opportunity. So of course, everything has to be lined up. They were
Yes.
prepared mentally, physically. They sacrificed their lives for it. But you have to have that right coach. Finding that right coach might seem easy, but it's not. Till this day in my career, it's a few coaches in my career that helped me move up levels. Very few, because then it happens. There's players that didn't even have that right coach in their career, and
Mm-hmm.
they never went up at the highest level. So
Again, the other observation is about mental resilience, and just that's in sports in general. And the example I want to give, and I know that you've got a lot of personal examples to share, Andre, but the example I want to give is Tom Brady, the NFL draft. He was, I think, ranked 199th overall in the 2000 NFL draft. Fast forward to today, and he has become one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. And if you ever watched interviews with Tom Brady, he always tells you that if it wasn't for his mental resilience, he would have given up years ago because people were telling him that he would never make it. And I know that you can relate to that, Andrea.
of course, I mean, he's one of the many athletes, that they were not destined to become the best in history. Again, from my career, what I saw, Nick, in regards for playing in different countries, I saw lots of talent. I saw players that had talent to play in first division, no problem. The thing is, they didn't have the mentality. In
Mm,
regards of playing in different countries, I saw lots of talents. I saw players that played in first divisions. I mean, players that had the talent to play in first divisions, but they didn't have the mentality. And the fact is this, that you have to have the right mentality in order to succeed, no matter how good you are. And then there's players that didn't have that first division talents, and they made it. It's
mm,
because I think over the years, uh, the older you get, the mentality just comes in a very important position in your career. And I saw it with my own eyes. It's sad to see, because I have lots of teammates, friends that unfortunately retired at a young age because they just didn't have that professional athlete mentality.
mm,
And it's just sad to see, because you see a wasted talent, and there's many, many stories like that.
mm,
And it happened with me. As I mentioned before, I wasn't the best player on the team when I was young. I wasn't the player that had to make it professionally, but I was always the one that had the best mentality. I was always the player that, if people ask about the presidents, the coaches that coached me at a young age, I was always the most professional, even
mm,
at a young age. And over my career, I was the only player that reached a professional level throughout my academy.
mm.
So I think mentality just comes in. It's a very important part, and it's beautiful too, because you see lots of underdogs that make it through because of it, and
Mm.
I love it. I'm all for that, but
And,
it's also sad.
well, it's sad when you see potential players that could make it big and they don't. But you mentioned something earlier, and I think it even shows now at the age you are is your work ethic. So it's your mental resilience and your work ethic, and you're going to get a lot of this episode here is about opinions. You're going to get people that are going to come and say to you that you can't make it for whatever reason. If you have the right mental resilience, it's like that saying, water off a duck's back. If you have that mental resilience and you have that work ethic, then, the world is your oyster. You can go as far as you want to. Obviously, there are going to be other hurdles along the way that you're going to experience. But I think very importantly is having the mental resilience because, as you can attest to, Andrea, is that coaches can be quite ruthless. They can be, particularly if you're at a professional club, they only want to see the best. And if you crack at just the first sign of some negative feedback, for example, you're never going to make it. Okay.
Of course.
So there are some opinions that are good and there are some opinions that you shouldn't listen to. But in this instance, for you to get through that, it's the mental resilience and the work ethic that's very, very important, as we've just shown with Andreas giving you your example, and obviously the example that everyone knows about Tom
Of
Brady.
course, of course. And just to add to that, I
Yeah.
think with that is, even going back to it, it's all a matter of having the professional mentality always, because there's going to be times where coaches might play you in the position that you don't like. There's coaches that sometimes maybe might bench you, but you have to have the mental toughness to go over that. You have to, because the time that you see the negative attitude, then you lost the battle there. So it's very important to, you have to adapt yourself to what's in front of you.
Mm.
And if he's going to put as a fullback and you're not a fullback, you
Mm.
have to adapt to it, because the coach is the boss. You have to
That's
listen to
right.
the coach.
And I think that's a perfect example of what our next obviously collective observation is, and that's adapting to different playing styles. Like you said, a coach will say to you, "I don't think you're a central defender. I think you're a midfielder," for example. Now, I've seen a lot of young kids, and I can attest to this personally, having seen my own son when he's played wing all his life, but somehow coaches want to put him in the midfield because he has the ability to play that position.
Yeah,
Now, at the start, it was like, oh, but I'm a winger. I'm not a midfielder. But again, that's okay. That's somebody's opinion, and this is the instance where an opinion can matter if you take it the right way. The example I want to give is Ronaldo, CR7. He started off as a winger because he was tricky. He was very hard to play, but now he's become one of the best strikers in the game. Okay,
yeah,
so who would have known? So adapting to that, to the different playing style, I think is really important. So sure, if
100%.
somebody says to you, "I don't think you're a defender," you need to understand why they're saying that to you. Now, if it's a coach and the coach is trying to fit you around the team and so forth, then take that on board. Okay. It's an opinion, and maybe you aren't a defender. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, first of all, I agree. I think, as in the professional game as well, to bring your value up, you have to be, especially how the modern football is going towards, you have to be a versatile player. You
Mm,
have to be willing, you have to know multiple positions,
mm,
and that's what I saw with my career is, throughout all my career, I was playing as a center back, full back, and sometimes as a defensive midfielder, but you have to adapt to it. And that's not always easy. But for example, in off season, you have to learn, you have to do trainings for multiple positions,
mm,
and how I worked on it is to play as a fullback and a center back. I had to change my body.
mm,
I had
mm,
to be more lighter. I had to work on my speed. There's the visions are different. As a center back, your vision is different from a fullback. So there's some trainings in off season that I work for both positions. So when that occasion comes where I have to play as a fullback, I'm ready for it.
mm,
So you have to be technically able to play as well in different positions and also physically, because if you just work to be a big, strong center back, and to switch as a fullback, it's going to be hard. So that's why I think you have to work mentally and as well with your body. You have to be able to play in multiple positions. You have to have that resistance as well. So I think it's very important. Nick, you also know, I mean, when my profile is being offered to clubs, I'm being offered for multiple positions,
that's right.
and it works for clubs because during the season, which happened to me many times, is I'm having a season as a center back, but then we get all our fullbacks injured, and that's where I come in,
Mm,
and that's where clubs can use you for both positions. Or if there's a need of a defensive midfielder, that's where I can come in. So it's
mm.
very important because injuries happen. Anything can happen during a season where there's no more backups. And if you can play in that position, that's where clubs they love those players, because you can help them in a low moment.
So what would your advice be to a young footballer listening to this if a coach said to him or her, um, I don't want you to play as a defender. I want you to play as a winger, or I want you to play as a midfielder. What would be your advice? I know what your advice would be, but
No, I mean, listen, for me, if they tell you to play in a position that you don't have experience in, first thing is first, I will watch videos of players that have your same type of body type, the same type of skill sets. So watch players that play at, for example, in this case, as you mentioned, as a winger. That's what happened with me. I would watch a lot of footage of players that played in as a fullback, for example, and I didn't have lots of experience as a fullback, and then you kind of memorize or kind of take all the notes
mm,
from the footage and then apply them in trainings, applying in your fitness levels. You have to, I think, observe videos and watch players,
mm,
and then slowly those movements get inside of your head, and then you can apply them on the field. So I
mm,
think observing and studying the game of those positions that you don't have lots of experience in
yeah.
is very, very important.
So, as far as opinions are concerned, as I said earlier, there are some opinions that are going to require you to think twice to say, well, does that opinion really count? And there are other opinions that, coming from professionals like coaches who have been in the game for a long time, can see things that you probably can't as a young
Of
player.
course, of course.
So, again, take that on board, and then brings in your mental capacity and how you analyze that. So, like you have said in previous podcasts, make sure that you have, the right people around you in your environment so you can
Of
bounce these
course.
opinions off others just so you don't make the wrong decision, or an opinion sets you back to the point where you don't want to play the game anymore, which will be devastating.
Of
So,
course.
I think that's important. And again, about setbacks, it's and every kid, every footballer is going to have setbacks.
Yeah,
And again, this is another observation that we've observed, is that just because you have a setback doesn't mean that your future as a professional footballer is over. And again, setbacks can be brought on by opinions, because if somebody says you're not good, or you're too chubby, or you're too small, or you're very bad off the ball, or you can't dribble that well, you start having negative thoughts, and that can create physical setbacks, so you don't perform well on the pitch. An example I can give you, as far as setbacks is concerned, that's the life of a professional footballer. And
of course, of
I'll hear
course.
from you in a moment, but the examples that I want to give are, Lewandowski, for example. He was rejected by so many clubs in Poland that they thought he was too weak. Um, Now, he could have turned around as a teenager and said, "Well, no one thinks I'm any good, so I'm going to go to
Do whatever.
university, study, do
Yeah,
something else." He didn't. He pursued, and now look at him. You could say the same thing about Ronaldo Nazario, R9. He got rejected by his favourite boyhood club. Haaland was rejected by Everton at a trial as a 15-year-old.
of course.
Antoine Griezmann, no French club wanted him. And then he went
Yeah.
on to play at Real Sociedad. So, well, what are your thoughts about setbacks? And that obviously ties into mental resilience. Well, give us maybe a personal example of a setback that happened to you as
Yeah.
a teenager.
I mean, first of all, it's a part of the game. So
Mm,
rejections are always there. From my experience, and football is crucial too, because you might get rejections in the same period, in the same transfer window. You might get 10
mm,
clubs, 10 rejections. So how I dealt with these rejections is you have to show up to your routine. You have to show up to your trainings. You have to follow your diet, no matter how unmotivated you are. And I feel like that's another problem, because a lot of people think when you train, you have to be mentally good, you have to be well recovered. There's some trainings, even Ronaldo mentioned it in an interview recently. There's some trainings that you're not motivated. There's some
mm.
trainings that you're tired, you're destroyed, you're mentally broken, but you have to show up always,
And
even
that,
in no matter how many rejections. And that happened to me in off seasons where there were deals that we're working on for many months, and it looked all good. And then for whatever reason, the deal didn't go through. I had
Mm,
to still show up that day to training. I had to still show up, even if mentally I was just destroyed. So
mm,
I think showing up to your routine, the diets, always keeping your diet good, that you're gonna win the battles. Because the day that you're not motivated, so you don't train, you're not motivated, so your diet might be a little bit messed up. You're losing mental battles, which in the
mm,
long run, it's going to affect you. So
mm,
always show up. And then with the rejections, based on my experience, as you also know, Nick, is the people that reject you. I usually, what I do is, maybe it might sound funny for some people, but I write down a list of names of directors, coaches, teammates, teams that that I received negative feedback, or that
mm.
they rejected me, and I have a list. And the days I'm not motivated, I have them on my notes. I just
Yeah,
look at the list. I just
that's
stare
a
at
great
it, and
idea.
then
Yeah.
it reminds me of why I have to prove them. It just gives me that little boost of motivation. There's some
Mm.
days where I just wake up in the morning and I just look at the list, just to remind myself.
And these are opinions. These are
And these are
opinions.
all opinions. These are all
Yeah.
opinions.
Yeah.
But with that is, you don't have to always think about the people that
Mm,
reject you, but
mm.
keep it behind of your head, because with that anger, the frustration, you keep it in and you release it on the pitch.
That's right.
Because when you walk on the pitch, then those rejections come and you're like, okay, now this is my time to show them.
Mm,
So it's
mm.
very important to not always think about it, but when it's time to play, just have a little reminder that, okay, I have lots of people that said I couldn't do this, and you
Yeah.
have to demonstrate it. And it's
Yeah.
a perfect platform to do it. It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
beautiful when you do it, because the adrenaline that you get when you prove someone wrong is the adrenaline is priceless. It's an adrenaline that you feel amazing after, because you proved it yourself and them, and it's amazing, amazing feeling.
And that's again, you've tied it very well into, and we haven't practiced this by the way, so you've tied it very well into how you can prove your critics wrong. I think that
Of course.
the coping mechanism that you just described before is really important. Not because you're holding grudges, you're basically saying to yourself, look how many people said that I couldn't do it. And here I am doing it, and I will continue to prove them wrong. And, look, we can mention so many global professional athletes in different sports that have proven their critics wrong, that should give comfort or at least motivation to young kids to know that even the best of the best had to go out and prove their critics wrong because there were people
Of course.
there giving these people's opinions. And Michael Jordan is probably the biggest
Best
and
example.
best example that we can give, because he was always being cut from his college basketball team, always. But you know what he did? Like Tom Brady, he trained relentlessly. He had this competitive spirit. He said, "You know what? I'm not going to let anyone say that I can't do this." Fast forward, and he ends up becoming
Of all
the
time.
greatest NBA basketballer of all time, but also the greatest athlete, one of the greatest athletes of all time.
Of
So
course. It's very important to even, for example, there's many athletes, Kobe Bryant, to have that mentality of being a
good.
competitor. And that's why I think having a list, sometimes it reminds you, like, it gets that competitiveness inside of you. It wakes you up.
Mm,
So I think it's very important, and definitely it's a method that has helped me tremendously throughout my career. So, and till this day I still have it. And this is not just coaches, directors. It might be
mm,
even friends. It might be family.
that's right.
So write down all the names of people in your life that have rejected you, or didn't support you. You just write them down as a reminder. So the days that you need it, you have them on your notes,
Mm.
and it's right there for you.
That's fantastic. That's a great personal experience. I hope that gives a lot of the young kids listening to this some inspiration
Of
to keep
course.
on going. The other example, just here before we go on to the next observation, was Mbappe. He was rejected by Chelsea
Yeah.
before he went off to become what he's become now, and we obviously can't wait to see him at Real Madrid. So. Um, The next one is obviously, as you've just said, being persistent when you get a lot of those rejections. So I look at football in particular like going for a job interview. If you've ever, and I know that a lot of young kids wouldn't have gone for, or maybe they have, working at fast food restaurants, etc. But you're going to get out of 100 applications, you're probably going to get 99 rejections, right? So you need to be persistent because remember, those 99 rejections are 99 opinions, one
Of
person's
course.
view, right? The example that I think will resonate with a lot of younger kids of today is obviously the author of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling. If you don't know her story, then you should certainly look it up because she was rejected by 12 different publishing houses, each publishing house saying that the story didn't make sense and it wasn't going to do. There have been stories like this that have been written in the past. Anyway, again, fast forward to now, and she's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, authors
Of all time.
of our generation of the modern time. So rejections will happen in football. It's good to look outside of football to see how others have tackled it, and I think the J.K. Rowling example is really
Great
important.
example.
So, in your experience, I'm sure that you've been rejected as a teenager, been rejected as an adult with clubs. And again, thinking about opinions, what did you do other than you've already told us your coping mechanisms in terms of how you persist, but how did you feel at the time? Because rejection, it's very hard to accept.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the first rejections I got were very hard because it's the first time my body is reacting in a way that received rejections. And then I think after, some time, whenever I got a negative feedback, I smiled. So the smiling kind of helped me because I'm like, okay,
Mm.
off to the next, and it takes time, it takes experience because I'm not saying your first rejection in your life, you're gonna be smiling, it's not like that. But I
Mm.
think over time, how I dealt with it is I smiled to myself, of course,
Yeah.
always with respect, but I know that, okay, that's an opinion, another one, here we go.
Yeah.
It's another journey, another obstacle, but it's a part of life. I mean, no matter what industry you are, you have to learn how to take rejections because,
Mm.
as you said, and what's all this podcast is about is it's all based on opinions.
That's right.
But of course, you have to let it go. You
Mm.
can't stick with it maybe for a couple minutes, think about it, but then let it go. Because if you don't let it go, you won't go forward.
Mm.
So you let go the rejections because you cannot do anything about it.
Mm.
So you just let
Mm.
it go. It's already been there. Let it go and off to the next. So that's
Yeah.
very important. It's very important.
That's fantastic. This next one I think is going to be very important, particularly for young kids that want to dream of playing professional football in Europe, and that's culturally. That's about cultural barriers. So if you look at it now, where you see players that are being loaned out all the time, so they might be loaned out from an English club and they have to go to Germany, or they might go from Germany to Sweden, or from the Netherlands to Italy. And you're perfect to talk about this because you've travelled across, 4 or 5 countries in your career, maybe more. Um, Overcoming these cultural barriers is really important because, you don't know the language, you don't know
Of course.
just the process of how things work. And, if anyone follows NBA, then they'd know about, that Chinese basketballer Yao Ming, who was 7'6". He was the first um, Chinese player to crack into the NBA. But what he did, he overcame those cultural barriers. He adapted, he thrived, and he ended up becoming an 8-time All-Star player and a global icon, which then paved the way for more
Of
Chinese
course.
players to enter the NBA. So, um, again, in your experience, and I'd be really interested to hear this because this is going to be some real, some golden nuggets of information here. Because as a teenager, as a 15, 16-year-old, you've traveled the world. How did you? And again, I know you've mentioned this in previous podcasts, but maybe recount one or two stories that you've had to overcome culturally.
Yeah, I mean, coach, there's always obstacles because, especially, first of all, you don't know anyone, you don't know the language. But how I always viewed it, even in training, how I always viewed it is I'm representing my country when I'm when I'm playing abroad. I'm representing my country, and I always have that pride. So you do feel alone sometimes because
Mm,
you're the only one out there, with people that you might not know the language or might not know them. But the idea of having pride for where I come from, and you're representing your city, your neighborhood in a different country, that gave me strength a lot.
mm,
Just because it
mm,
reminded me from where I come from, it reminded me the morals that my country, my city has,
mm,
and that brought me where I'm. It's like playing an away game, for example. It's like if you're playing for your national team and you're going to play another country. That's exactly how I view it. So you have to always represent yourself in the best way possible. Represent your country, your heritage, because at the end of the day, people are not going to look at you as Andrea Pergoni. They're going to look at you as the Italian.
mm.
That's what I
That's right.
saw.
Mm,
They look at you from where you're from. And so every time where I went, oh, the Italian is here. So it's
mm,
not
mm,
Andrea's here. It's always about where you're from. So
mm,
always have the pride with you no matter where you go, because it's like if you're playing an away game. So it's another battle every day, and it's not easy. I'm not here saying it's going to be easy, but you have to have that pride. If
mm.
you don't have the pride, then they're gonna definitely, it's gonna be challenging because it's all mind games here.
Of
So
course, and it's
um,
also, if I can just interject quickly,
yeah,
it's also, you mentioned in previous discussions that we've had, when you were playing in Portugal, when you were playing in Spain, you didn't know the language. Even though you're Italian, your English is amazing. You didn't know the language, and
thank you.
so you had to try and fit in very, very quickly. Otherwise, you would have been lost.
Correct. I mean, in my experiences playing abroad, I had breakfast, lunch, and dinners with the teams, and I could understand. There
Mm.
wasn't a communication because not everybody spoke my languages,
Yeah.
and so a lot of times I didn't know if they were making fun of me, if they were insulting me. You just don't know.
Mm,
And
mm,
it's hard. It's hard because especially when you're young, sometimes or most of the times I was just quiet, and
mm,
it's not
mm,
because I was not social, but it was just because of the language barrier. But at the same time, you're in a team environment, so you don't know, uh, who's saying what, so it was very hard, but I think I learned how to control the emotions at that time,
mm.
and I tried to as well get involved in some conversations, and it motivated me even to speak languages. So, now to this day, I speak four languages, and it's also a motivation for me because I wanted to communicate. It was frustrating when you couldn't. So, I was fortunate for clubs to provide me tutors, or I learned some languages by myself, or I kind of observed how they spoke with the dialect, with the accent. And so that motivated me to even learn the language because
Mm,
it's also out of respect, and you
of
want
course.
to talk their own language sometimes. You're in their country, you're in a city. So if you
Mm,
can learn their language, it's also out of respect. So that motivated me to learn more. And till this day, I mean, for right now, I know four languages, and who knows
fantastic.
how many languages I could speak in the future.
Of course, of course. I think that's important, particularly if you are looking at playing in Europe. In fact, if you're looking at playing professional football, full stop, whether you get picked up by an English club or a European club or any other club, you're going to get loaned out at some point. If that
Of
happens,
course.
if it and if it does, you're going to be sent to a country that you've never been before. So always accept those cultural. The different cultural aspects of the country that you'll be going to. So that's great advice. Look, finally, before we come to a close, is the overall, I guess, message that we want to get to kids here is about. is about opinions, and some opinions could be valid, and other opinions, and I'd say most opinions are just opinions, are just points of view, right? So I guess the overall message is, you know, turning any sort of weakness into a strength. Okay. Again, when somebody says to you, you know, you can't dribble the ball that well, or you can't, you know, you can't cross that well, or you're too slow, or you know, you're not the right height, you're not the right weight, etc. Try and turn those weaknesses into strengths. So
Of course.
it might be an opinion, but take that opinion on board and say, well, okay, how can I better this? So next time a coach, any coach sees me, they don't have that that opinion. I'm the one that will dictate that opinion,
Of course.
basically. You know, and again, if I can give an example, I'll use NBA again. Stephen Curry, who everyone obviously knows. You know, he was, you know, a 6'3" guy, which, you know, in most people terms, that's very, very tall. Although they found him in the NBA to be a bit on the small side, because, you know, NBA players are 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", whatever, right? Um, but he then turned that weakness of being small into being a great 3-point shooter. And again, he's won multiple, you know, MVPs and NBA championships because he took that one weakness and he turned it into a strength, which changed his entire career as a professional basketballer. So,
Yeah, I think to add to that is I think it's very important in my situation as a not big and tall center back or defender. I learned how to use different characteristics and abilities during the game. So during the years, I learned if I'm marking a striker that's double my height and
mm,
size, I learned how to anticipation became a factor. Reading the game, anticipate his movements so I don't have to use my body. And you have to play smart. I use speed, for example. So I think for whatever your weakness is, you have to learn to play smart. So if it might be physical, it might be speed wise, it might be your shot. So I think you have to adapt to play smarter. And I think you only know what's your weaknesses
mm, mm,
exactly.
mm,
So in my case, it was a lot of that. I learned how
mm,
to play smarter with strikers bigger than me, and over the years, you just become more experienced.
mm,
And now, if I do face a person that's double my size, I already know how to work it out.
mm, mm,
And of course, on the paper, there's a big difference. Oh, he's 6'5" and he's 5'11". Of course, on paper it might seem a mismatch, but if you do learn how to play in a smart way, just like Cannavaro, Baresi, Puyol, Martinez, a lot of these defenders, Philip Lam, for example, another great example, they played smart because they learned how to adapt, their weakness into strengths, and I
yeah,
think that's very important. And then you have to take things on the personal side as well. So, we start this sport as well as you, Nick and Max, and most of them with passion. It's all about passion. But at the same time, when you do have someone tells you your weakness or you have a rejection, you have to take that in a personal way.
mm,
So
mm,
then it becomes also a personal thing, because passion is fundamental, but when it becomes personal, then that's where the competitor side of yourself comes out, just like you mentioned Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady. They
mm.
had that side that nobody knew about, but because they took it personal. So I think that's very important, and great example as well as you said with
Yeah.
NBA.
Look, I think, you know, we've covered a lot of areas that young footballers could really learn from. And again, everyone has an opinion. You know, people have opinions on whether, you know, who's the GOAT in football, Messi or Ronaldo. Their opinions. It means nothing. You know, Ronaldo is on his own journey. Messi is on his own journey. Their
Yeah,
opinions. So in the real world of football, whether it's professional or whether you're aiming to become professional, you know, one coach might not like you as a player. One coach has his opinion that he doesn't like you as a player, but the next coach might think you're the perfect fit for the team. Okay. So everyone has an opinion and they're entitled to their opinion. But the trick is not to actually take it to heart and to take each opinion, not necessarily with a grain of salt, but to look at it and say, well, okay, why do they think I'm too slow? Maybe I am. What do I need to do to overcome that? Why do they think I'm a bad defender and I should be playing as a midfielder? Well, let me have a look at it, and I'll start looking at how midfielders play and show them that if I'm put into as a midfielder, I can play midfielder. So
Of course.
the overall message here is that your journey in football is yours and yours alone, no one else's. So embrace it with the ups, with your downs, because you're going to get that at every step of the way. And getting to the top is not easy. Becoming that professional footballer that walks onto the Bernabeu or walks onto Old Trafford, it doesn't happen overnight. Okay. There are a lot of things that you need to overcome. And one of those is obviously negative opinions from people. But above all, the message here is never, ever, ever let anyone's opinion define who you are as a footballer, or even your potential as a footballer. It should get you. It should motivate you to push harder, to train smarter, and to prove yourself. And that's what it really comes down to.
Correct. I mean, at the end of the day, you also have to understand, you have to respect the game too, you're not the only one that's going to get rejected. So you shouldn't feel that you're the only one on this planet that's getting rejected. There's many players in your position. So this is one big community. We're all going through the same journey. Of course, maybe the journeys are
Of
different, but
course.
we're all going through the same emotions. So you're not alone. Never feel alone that you're the only one getting rejections. But I think you have to respect the game as well. This is a part of the game. You have to respect it, even with
Mm,
the players that have the talent, but they never make it to the top level because they don't have the mentality.
that's
Because
right.
you're not respecting the game.
Mm,
You have to respect the game, because then their game will respect you, and everything
mm,
in life comes back, no matter what you do. So if you put your full dedication, you go through your obstacles in the proper way, everything will come back in life, and that's something that, Nick, you have more experience than me, you see it every day, those small details, if you do in the proper way, as a good person, everything will come back in life, and
yeah.
I think that's fundamental.
They're great, great, great words to close this off, Andrea. Thank you for a great discussion, and I'm sure that this will resonate with a lot of young kids. Above all, to overcome a lot of these obstacles, just have fun when you're on the pitch. It's going to be tough, but make sure that you have fun playing the game, because the minute you lose that passion, the minute you lose the I guess the view that this game is fantastic and you're loving it, then that's when you need to start asking yourself the hard questions. But above all, have fun. We hope that you've learned something of value, and we look forward to seeing you again on our next podcast. Thanks very much, Andrea.
Thank you.